Hello, writers of the world. Thank you again for joining me on my channel, the Agent Mo channel. My name is Agent Mo. I am an author and a former junior literary agent, and I am very happy to be here with you tonight. In fact, I was so happy last time, based on the feedback that I received, that it just enticed me to come back and talk to you about the writing process, about querying, about publishing. It's just such a fantastic topic, and it's so huge, and I want to present it all to you today in this episode and in future episodes. So please don't forget to like, to subscribe to my channel. Also, click on the notifications button. It's the little bell down at the bottom so that you can receive notifications every time I upload a new video. Today's video, I'll be reviewing the 4 guidelines of a good query letter, the 4 elements that make up a good query letter, and I'll be expanding a little bit on that by demonstrating how to fix one of my older query letters. In fact, it was really bad. It was a really ugly query letter, and I'm really surprised at how I sent it, and it was rejected, of course, but I will be fixing that, and it will be available to you in email form. What am I talking about? It'll be available for you online on my website. So please make sure you check that at www.moshalaby.com. It'll be under the newsletter section, actually. Or you can move on to this timeline and I will start the demonstration. But before I move into talking about that, I do want to kind of highlight something that I saw as a junior literary agent regarding queries. So I was very familiar with the query process. It was one of the first things that I was actually supposed to do or learn as a junior budding agent, which was to sift through the query slush pile. We call it the slush pile for multiple reasons. It's not a derogatory term. It just means that there's so many query letters that you kind of have to slosh through them. And what it taught me as an author and as an agent was to really pay attention to what grabs an agent and what an author has to do in order to grab that agent. And I really enjoyed the process. Like I said, it helped me understand the 4 elements that make a query letter really well. And let's just go through these very quickly so that we can move on to the next step of the video. And they are: number 1, make sure that you have an introduction, and the introduction has to include 2 things. The first one is it needs to be personalized according to the agent that you are submitting to. Number 2, make sure you are identifying what you are selling, what is the manuscript that you are trying to sell to this agent so that they can sell it to an editor in the future. Number 3, it has to include a hook. This is your short movie trailer. And number 4, make sure that you include your bio and your credentials. That way the agent, the editor in the future will understand why it is that you wrote the story and if you do actually have the credentials to write a story. Towards the end of the video, I will talk about submission guidelines for me so that you could submit to me query letters. I will be picking a number, probably 1 or 2 query letters out of that slush pile so that I can review them on air. And again, just like I said last time, you do not have to, if you don't want me to read your name online, I do not have to read it. You just have to let me know about that. And I'll give more guidelines towards the end of the video. Stick with me until the next section, and I will be back after that. Bye. Hello, writers. Thank you again for joining me. And as I promised you before, this is the query letter that I sent to multiple agents before. And for those of you familiar with the query process or writing query letters in general, you'll realize that this query doesn't really have anything that the agent will want to see. I mean, the only thing it does include of the 4 elements that I described in my previous episode is the hook. Barely a hook, honestly. It's just a very quick synopsis and not a very well written one either. So let's try and make this even better. Again, and I'm very happy that the agent did not accept this because it is bad. It's a very, very bad query letter. So be careful. try to compare this to what you have currently, if you have anything. That way you know what not to do whenever you're querying. So from the beginning, I want to say that I did not include an introduction, and the introduction in this case should include a personalized kind of message as to why I picked that specific agent. It should also include some selling points, identifying why or where or how my book is going to sell, which means it needs to include the title, which I included right here in the wrong place. It needs to include the genre, and it needs to include the word count. And as you look closely at this query letter, you'll find that none of those elements are here. It also does not include the bio. So a simple hook will not do. An agent needs to know who's writing this story, why they're writing this story, and why that story is good for them. So at the end, you need to include right here, you need to include your bio and your credentials. So without further ado, let's look at the completed query letter, the corrected query letter. And actually, I worked on this one not very long ago. So here it is. And as you can see, this query letter includes all 4 elements of a good query letter, of a basic query letter. Actually, I don't have to say good because not all query letters are good, but it includes an introduction, as you can see right here. The introduction is personalized. I included the name of the agent. Make sure that you do include their name, Mr., Mrs., agent name, and make sure that it's not just Dear Agent. A lot of agents prefer going by their first name. Again, it depends on the submission guidelines. Make sure you read the submission guidelines religiously. They are there for a purpose, and agents adhere to them. So make sure you do too as well. Or you do as well. After the introduction, I included my hook, as you can see right here. After the hook, I included my credentials and my bio. So let's read it very quickly, see if it includes all 4 elements of a query letter. Dear Agent, Dear Mr., Dear Mrs., and their name. Again, when it comes to Mrs. or Miss, I usually go with Miss. I don't want to assume anything about the agent. In fact, sometimes it's even better to just include their first name. I saw that you were interested in representing archaeology adventure novels with strong female leads, and have represented a few of my favorites, such as, and in this case you include some similar titles to your manuscript. This is good because this shows the agent that A, you've done your homework, B, you know which books are similar to yours. And so you're submitting it to them on account that they might be the best person to represent it because they've represented these books before. They're familiar with the market. They know how to sell it. In some instances, agents will come back to you and say, well, I mean, I've already seen this before. I really can't sell it, or I really don't want to sell it. Or I have too many of them, so I'm looking for something new. And that happens, so don't be discouraged by that. But give it a try. Include something here that personalizes why you decided to send your query letter to this specific agent. Maybe it's a book that they represented. Maybe you spoke to them at a writer's conference. Maybe you tweeted them or had an exchange with them on Twitter, online. Include that here. It's really good to familiarize yourself with the agent and their work. And if you even did meet them, that's better. That's a lot better. The agent will remember you. So include that at the beginning. As you can see here, I concluded it with the name of my book, the title of the manuscript. I didn't include the word count or the genre. I left those all the way towards the end. That's good enough on my introduction. In further videos and other videos in the future, I will talk about Twitter pitch parties. I'll talk about writers' conferences, just so that you can get a better idea of how those are usually managed. All right, I immediately start with the hook. Don't waste any time on explaining outside information or information that the agent doesn't necessarily need to know. If you go back to the very first query letter that I wrote, the before, you'll notice that I spent a lot of time on details that don't really matter to the agent, or questions right here. I just ask a whole bunch of questions and then eventually summarize the whole hook in the end, which is not really necessary. It's actually a waste of space. So I start the hook here talking about my main character. I don't need to include her last name. That's just extra information that the agent doesn't really care about, seeing that they don't know who your character is or why they should care about them. So in the very first part of the paragraph, you want to give the agent a reason to care about your main character. Why should they care about your main character? Tell me something about that main character that will hook them. Again, this is your movie trailer equivalent, but in writing form. So Mona, a young Egyptian archaeologist. I included young and Egyptian. This identifies almost what genre it is. It also identifies what kind of book it is. Well, this book includes diverse characters. My main character is Egyptian. And it's good because I come from a diverse background, so it's okay for me to write characters that come from a diverse background, especially since I understand these backgrounds and those cultures. If you don't, that's another conversation for another video. Mona, a young Egyptian archaeologist, is seeking a stolen treasure that was once unearthed by her father, an ancient Arabian scroll upon which was written the original Arabian Nights tale of the city of Brass. I summed up the thesis of the entire novel in just one sentence. There's a lost scroll that my main character needs to find, and it once belonged to her father. Seeing how the Parisian Museum had hounded her father to turn it in, Mona has reason to suspect they are behind the theft, but there's no way to know for sure. This is conflict right here. Again, it's another hook, another reason to hook the agent. Moving on. With her friend dead and her mother away, this is good to know. In the previous and the before example, I included a lot more detail, which is not really important, but this is good to know that her father and mother are absent. She's cared for by a family friend. Now I introduce a new character. What's the importance of this new character? Well, he's a famous historian by the name of Salim. No need for last names. Salim, why is he important? Salim is also determined to find the treasure, for it seems to hold a greater secret, a hidden map to the lost city of Brass which holds at its center an unhuman power. Maybe he's tempted by its secrets too. So this gets the agent, gets them thinking, wow, this must be interesting, this must be intriguing. Again, it depends on the idea of your story, but you're pulling them, you're reeling them in. Now you have two characters looking for this scroll. Now there's a bigger reason. The stakes are higher. There's someone who's apprehending them for this treasure. Even more stakes. You want to build. Make this hook, so tempting that the agent is not going to put down your query or even the book in the future. Reading on. Little by little, they stumble upon crumbs left behind by her father, to guide them to the fabled city. But their apprehenders are at their tail, making sure to get to the city before Mona and Salim do. They want the power to themselves, and if they breach the city, if they unleash its powers, Mona and Salim might be too late to save humanity from 1,001 curses. I really like the ending to this one, the 1,001 curses. I like it. I just thought it was a cute addition because it kind of goes back to the 1001 Arabian Nights stories, and it's just a cute little wordplay. So feel free to do that, but again, as you can see here, it's very concise. I didn't give away too much information. I didn't give away too much of the hook. I gave only what the agent wants to know or needs to know in order to request my book. If you add too many details, it turns them off and they will stop reading because it's just too much boring details that they're not really interested in because they don't know anything about your characters. So you have to give them a reason to care about your characters. Finally, as you can see, this is a section I talked about in the beginning, identifying what it is that you're selling to the agent or what they're going to sell to editors. You can literally copy and paste this right here at the beginning. I decide to leave it at the end because I like it there. Arabesque is a 70,000 word literary thriller. I have my title, I have my word count, and I have my genre. Written in the style of Clive Cussler's Sahara meets Tomb Raider. This right here is what we refer to in the agenting world and the writing world as comp titles. And comp titles are titles of books or movies, depending on the agent. Again, read the submission guidelines. Some agents are okay with movie comp titles. Comp titles are books that are very similar to the book that you wrote. Where did you get your inspiration from? I got them from Tomb Raider, Uncharted, and Sahara, which is Clive Cussler's book, because I was inspired by those books and movies. But again, make sure you read the submission guidelines and see what kind of comp titles does the agent request. If nothing, then I say go for whatever comp titles are similar to your book. And in that case, choose 2. No more than 2. If you choose 3, that's fine. It's really not that bad. And in the end, I included with my bio. As you can see, Sweet includes some writing credentials. It's very, it sums up all of my experience in the writing world, enough for the agent to know that I do have some writing background. That's good. It's relevant, and I included it. The more you add, don't add too much to where it overflows and it goes beyond 1 page. You don't need to do that. But add enough credentials to tell the agent to indicate that you know what you're talking about. And sometimes I even add a reason why I wrote the book. I wrote this novel because I'm hoping to publish a book that includes a strong female woman of color as a main character. So that's a good reason. Why not? I don't see a lot of powerful, strong women in books. I decided to write one. There you go. And she happens to be a woman of color. And this final sentence is really, really important. This indicates that the manuscript is done, revised, and ready to go. The full manuscript is available upon your request. Thank you for your time and consideration. Make sure you follow these guidelines whenever you are working on your query letter, and I assure you it will be great. It will be unputdownable. There you go. I just made a word right now. And thank you for hanging out with me. Welcome back, writers of the world. I hope you enjoyed that demonstration on how to fix a query letter, because this upcoming section, I'm going to talk about my own submission guidelines. For this round, what I want to do is I want to request query letters from you. For this round, I am not going to ask for samples. If you're familiar with the submission process, if you're familiar with the querying process, then you know that some agents will also request some sample pages. For the time being, all I want to see is query letters in the following genres. I'd love to see literary fiction. I'd love to see young adult, contemporary. I'd love to see some fantasy. I'd love to see some science fiction, a thriller or two. Submit those to my through my website, www.moshalaby.com. Down below, I'll add the address, and just simply go to my contacts page, submit the query letter in the body of the email, and I will pick 1 or 2 to read on the air. So please let me know if you want your name mentioned or not. If not, then that's totally fine. It doesn't bother me really. But if you do, then I'd be more than happy to give you feedback on air. And again, I'd like to be very selective, because that's how agents really do it. If they receive a large number or a large volume of query letters, then they have to be very selective on which ones they choose. And I will be selective unless I have a few, because I'm still a starting channel. In that case, I'll just pick the ones that I receive. So until the next episode, I believe this is going to be the last episode in which I talk about the query process, but if you do have any special requests, please let me know in the comments section below. If you have any specific questions about query letters, I will be more than happy to answer those for you. For the time being, like this video, subscribe, click on the notification button so that you can receive news from me on further episodes that I make. And until the next episode, I'll see you later. Bye.